The blue light faded, and Princess Zixara found herself standing in a room that was definitely not the diplomatic quarters she had expected. Her golden eyes scanned the small, simple space with growing confusion. Where were the elegant furnishings? The ceremonial banners? The respectful servants waiting to greet her? Instead, she saw a narrow bed with plain white sheets, a small metal desk covered in papers and walls decorated with nothing but a few photographs and what appeared to be pressed flowers in simple frames. The air smelled different too, not the perfumed atmosphere of diplomatic chambers, but something earthier like soil and growing things. "Well, that's not something you see every day," came a deep voice from behind her. Zixara spun around, her elaborate robe swirling, and found herself face to face with a human soldier. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and several visible scars across his face and arms. His uniform bore the insignia of the Human Federation military, and she could see old battle marks on the fabric. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. The princess had never been this close to a human before, especially not a soldier. Everything she had been taught told her that this creature was dangerous, violent, and unpredictable. Her training screamed at her to call for help or activate her emergency beacon, but something held her back. The human, the dangerous, barbaric human, was holding a steaming cup in one hand and had been reading what looked like a book when she appeared. His expression wasn't threatening or aggressive. If anything, he looked concerned. "Are you all right?" the soldier asked, setting down his cup and taking a small step back to give her space. "You look a bit shaken up." Zixara's mouth opened and closed without sound. In all her diplomatic training, no one had ever covered what to do when a human showed concern for her well-being. According to everything she had learned, humans only cared about conquest and destruction. I believe there has been an error," she managed to say, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species. "I was supposed to materialize in the diplomatic quarters of the station." The human, she noticed his name tag read Chen, nodded slowly. "This is definitely not the diplomatic section. This is military housing, level 7, section C." He paused, studying her ornate clothing and the small crown-like device on her forehead. "You're Princess Zixara, aren't you? The one here for the peace negotiations?" She was surprised he knew who she was, and even more surprised that he pronounced her name correctly. Most humans she had heard recordings of butchered Velthari names terribly. "Yes," she said cautiously. "I am Princess Zixara of the Velthari Empire." "Sergeant Marcus Chen," he replied, offering a slight bow that seemed respectful rather than mocking. "It's an honor to meet you, Your Highness. Though I have to say, someone really messed up your teleportation coordinates." Zixara felt a flutter of worry in her chest. Teleportation errors were extremely rare with Velthari technology. For the coordinates to be wrong meant either a serious malfunction or sabotage, she whispered, the word escaping before she could stop it. Marcus's expression grew serious. "You think someone did this on purpose?" Before she could answer, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Marcus moved to his small window and peered out through the metal slats. "Station security," he said quietly. "Looks like they're searching for someone." He turned back to her. "Probably you." The footsteps grew louder and Zixara heard voices. Human voices speaking in urgent tones about finding the lost princess and securing her for her own safety. Something about their tone made her skin crawl. "Your Highness," Marcus said softly. "I don't know much about royal politics, but those security officers sound a little too eager to find you. In my experience, when people are that excited about helping someone, it usually means the opposite." Zixara looked at him in surprise. This human, this soldier she had been taught to fear, was offering to help her think through the situation instead of immediately turning her over to the authorities. "I do not understand," she said. "Why would station security wish to harm me? This is a neutral station?" "Neutral doesn't mean safe," Marcus replied. "Sometimes it just means everyone has enemies here." The footsteps were getting closer now. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but my gut says something's not right. You want my advice?" Zixara found herself nodding, though she couldn't quite believe she was asking a human soldier for guidance. "Stay quiet for a minute. Let's see what these security guys really want." The footsteps stopped right outside Marcus's door. Zixara could hear low voices discussing room numbers and search patterns. Her heart began to race. Marcus gestured for her to move away from the door and toward the small area near his desk. As she moved, she noticed something that made her pause. Among his papers were what looked like study materials, language guides, cultural notes, and even what appeared to be poetry written in Velthari script. "You read our language?" She whispered so quietly that only someone very close could hear. Marcus glanced at the papers and looked almost embarrassed. "I've been learning. Figured if we're going to have peace talks, someone should try to understand your culture." He paused. "Your poetry is beautiful, by the way. Much more complex than most humans realize." Zixara stared at him. In her entire life, she had never met a Velthari who appreciated their classical poetry, let alone a human. Most of her own people considered it old-fashioned and irrelevant. The voices outside grew louder and someone knocked on the door. "Sergeant Chen? Station security. We're looking for a missing VIP. Mind if we take a look around?" Marcus looked at Zixara, and she could see him making a decision. Something in his eyes told her that he was choosing to trust his instincts rather than follow protocol. "Just a second," Marcus called out. He moved to his small closet and pulled out a spare military jacket. "Put this on," he whispered to Zixara. "Pull the hood up and keep your head down." "Why are you helping me?" she whispered back as she slipped into the oversized jacket. Marcus paused for a moment as if considering the question seriously. "Because someone who spends their free time learning about other cultures instead of planning to fight them deserves a chance to figure out what's really going on." He opened the door to find 3 security officers standing in the hallway. They were human, but something about their demeanor seemed off to Zixara. Too tense, too focused. "Evening, Sergeant," the lead officer said. "We're looking for the Velthari princess. Her teleportation beacon shows she materialized somewhere in this section." "Haven't seen any Velthari tonight," Marcus replied calmly. "Been reading and trying to get some rest. These quarters don't get much traffic." The officer's eyes swept the small room, passing over Zixara without recognition. In the oversized human military jacket with her distinctive features hidden, she looked like just another off-duty soldier. "Mind if we check your bathroom and closet?" The officer pressed. "Go ahead," Marcus said, stepping aside. As the security team searched his quarters, Marcus casually moved to stand between them and Zixara. It was a subtle movement, protective without being obvious. The officers found nothing, of course, and after a few more questions, they moved on to search other rooms. Marcus waited until their footsteps faded before closing the door and engaging the lock. "Okay," he said, turning to face Zixara. "Now we need to figure out what's really happening here, and why someone wanted you to end up in the wrong room." Zixara pulled down the hood and looked at this strange human who had just risked his career to protect someone he had never met. Everything she thought she knew about his species was beginning to crumble. "Sergeant Chen," she said quietly, "I believe you may be right about the sabotage, and I fear the implications are far more serious than either of us realizes." Outside in the corridor, the sound of searching continued, but inside the small quarters, an unlikely alliance was beginning to form, one that would change both of their lives forever. Hours had passed since the security search, and Princess Zixara found herself sitting on Marcus's small chair while he prepared what he called real tea on a tiny heating unit in the corner of his quarters. The whole situation felt impossible to her. She was sharing space with a human soldier, drinking his beverages, and somehow feeling safer than she had in months. "This is different from the tea they serve in the diplomatic sections," she said, taking another sip of the warm, fragrant liquid. "It should be," Marcus replied, settling onto his bed since it was the only other place to sit. "I grow the herbs myself. There's a small hydroponics bay on level 12 that most people don't know about. Started it as a hobby, but it's become more important than that." Zixara looked at him with curiosity. "You grow plants? But I thought human soldiers only focused on weapons and fighting techniques." Marcus laughed, a sound that was surprisingly warm. "That's what a lot of people think. Truth is, most of us spend more time trying to preserve things than destroy them. Hard to explain why you're fighting for something if you don't understand what makes it worth protecting." He got up and moved to his small desk, returning with a leather-bound notebook. "Can I show you something?" "I've been working on this for months." Zixara nodded, and Marcus opened the notebook to reveal page after page of carefully written text in her native language. But these weren't just language exercises or military intelligence notes. These were translations of Velthari poetry, complete with notes about meter, rhythm, and cultural context. The Song of Seven Moons, she whispered, recognizing one of the classical pieces. You translated the entire work? I tried to, Marcus said, looking a bit embarrassed. I know I probably got a lot of it wrong. The emotional layers in Velthari poetry are incredibly complex, but I wanted to understand how your people see beauty, how you express love and loss. Zixara felt something shift inside her chest. Most of my own people consider these poems outdated and useless. They say classical poetry doesn't help us expand our territory or increase our resources. That's exactly why it's important, Marcus said earnestly. Anyone can learn about a species' weapons or technology from intelligence reports. But poetry, art, that shows you what they value, what they dream about, what breaks their hearts. For the first time since arriving on the station, Zixara smiled genuinely. You understand something that even my own advisors do not, Sergeant Chen. Just Marcus is fine, he said. And what I understand is that peace can't come from fear or ignorance. It has to come from actually knowing each other. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from Marcus's communication device. He frowned as he read the message, his expression growing serious. What is it? Zixara asked. News from the diplomatic channels, Marcus said slowly. According to this, you were killed in a transport accident 3 hours ago. Your body was supposedly recovered by station medical teams. Zixara's golden eyes widened in shock. That is impossible. I am clearly alive. I know that and you know that, Marcus said, but according to official reports, Princess Zixara died when her teleportation chamber malfunctioned. The Velthari delegation is preparing to leave the station, and they're blaming human sabotage for your death. The princess stood up quickly, her mind racing. This is worse than simple sabotage. Someone is using my supposed death to destroy the peace negotiations. Marcus pulled up more news feeds on his device.
It gets worse.
Look at this. The screen showed footage of Velthari ships moving into attack positions near human space. Military leaders from both sides were making angry statements about betrayal and revenge. The peace talks weren't just over. They were about to become the opening act for a war. My father, Zixara whispered. He thinks I am dead. He thinks humans murdered his daughter. And Human Command thinks the Velthari are using your death as an excuse to attack, Marcus added. Someone played both sides perfectly. Zixara began to pace in the small space, her robe swishing as her mind worked through the implications. Commander Thexol was in charge of my security arrangements. He insisted on personally setting my teleportation coordinates. Thexol? Marcus looked up from his device. I've heard that name. He's one of the Velthari military leaders who opposed these peace talks from the beginning. Yes, but surely he would not. Zixara paused, though he has been saying for months that diplomacy is weakness, that only strength can save our dying homeworld. Marcus set down his device and looked at her seriously. Princess, I need to tell you something. There are humans who think the same way. General Morrison and his faction believe that any alien species is a threat that needs to be eliminated before they can eliminate us. You think they are working together? Two groups who want the same thing, war instead of peace? It's possible. Marcus stood up and moved to his closet. We need to get proof and we need to get word to the right people before shooting starts. But how? I am supposedly dead and you are just one soldier. Marcus pulled out a small backpack and began filling it with supplies. First rule of survival. Use what you have, not what you wish you had. You know the station's diplomatic protocols and security systems. I know the service tunnels and maintenance areas. Together, we might be able to move around without being detected. You want us to work together? Zixara asked. A human soldier and a Velthari princess. I want to prevent a war, Marcus said simply. Everything else is just details. Zixara watched him pack emergency rations, medical supplies, and his translation notes into the backpack. This human was risking everything to help her, a member of a species he had never met before today. Why? She asked quietly. Why are you doing this? Marcus paused in his packing and looked at her. Because 3 hours ago I was just another soldier preparing for the possibility of war. Now I've met someone from the other side, and I realize that war means destroying people like you. People who appreciate poetry and ask thoughtful questions and make really good conversation over tea. He finished packing and slung the backpack over his shoulder. Besides, my grandmother always said that the right thing to do is usually the hard thing to do. This definitely qualifies. Zixara felt something she had never experienced before. Complete trust in someone from another species. What do we do first? We find out who else knew your real teleportation coordinates, Marcus said. And we figure out how they're planning to fake evidence of human involvement in your death. He moved to his small window and checked the corridor. The shift change happens in 20 minutes. That's when the service tunnels will be least monitored. Marcus, Zixara said, using his first name for the first time. If we are caught, both of our people will consider us traitors. Marcus looked back at her and smiled. Then we better not get caught. As they prepared to leave the safety of his quarters, Zixara realized that everything she had been taught about humans was wrong. They weren't mindless warriors or heartless conquerors. At least this one wasn't. Marcus Chen was risking his career, his reputation, and possibly his life to prevent a war that would hurt both their peoples. Maybe, she thought, there was hope for peace after all. But first they had to survive long enough to expose the truth. The corridor outside grew quiet as the shift change began. Marcus checked his chronometer and nodded to her. "Ready, Your Highness?" "Ready," she replied. "And Marcus?" "Just Zixara is fine." Together, the unlikely allies stepped into the corridor, beginning a dangerous journey that would either save both their species or destroy them in the attempt. The service tunnels of Concordia Station were darker and more cramped than Zixara had expected. She followed Marcus through the narrow passages, trying to move as quietly as her elaborate robes would allow. The human moved with practiced ease, clearly familiar with these hidden routes. "How do you know these tunnels so well?" she whispered as they paused at a junction. "Recovery duty," Marcus replied softly, checking his small handheld scanner for movement ahead. "When soldiers get hurt in training exercises, someone has to carry them out without disrupting station operations. These maintenance ways are the fastest routes to medical." They had been moving for 30 minutes, working their way toward the station's communication center. Marcus's plan was simple. Access the message logs to find proof of who had coordinated the sabotage. Zixara's royal access codes could get them into secured systems, while Marcus's knowledge of human military protocols would help them understand what they found. "Movement ahead," Marcus said, reading his scanner. 2 people moving fast. They pressed against the tunnel wall as footsteps echoed past their position. Zixara caught a glimpse of the figures through a ventilation grate. 2 Velthari soldiers in full combat gear, moving with purpose through the diplomatic section. "Those are not regular station security," she whispered. "Those are Imperial Guard, elite troops." Marcus frowned. "What would Imperial Guard be doing here? The peace negotiations don't require that level of protection. They would only be here on direct orders from—" Zixara's eyes widened in realization. "From Commander Thexol. He has the authority to deploy them for special operations." "Operations like hunting down a princess who's supposed to be dead?" Before Zixara could answer, Marcus's scanner began beeping rapidly. Multiple contacts moving in coordinated search patterns throughout the station. "We've got problems," Marcus said. "Looks like both human and Velthari forces are conducting sweeps. They're not just looking for you anymore, they're looking for both of us." They moved deeper into the tunnel system, but soon encountered their first real obstacle. A maintenance shaft that Marcus remembered being clear was now blocked by construction equipment. "Alternate route?" Zixara asked. "Yeah, but it means going through the industrial sector. More exposure, more risk of detection." As they climbed through a vertical shaft toward the industrial levels, Zixara's communicator, which she had kept turned off, suddenly activated on its own. Commander Thexol's voice filled the narrow space. "Princess Zixara," came the familiar, commanding tone. "I know you can hear this message. Your supposed death has served its purpose, but your continued existence threatens everything we have worked to achieve." Marcus and Zixara exchanged glances in the dim light of the shaft. "The Human Federation believes they killed you through sabotage," Thexol continued. "Our fleet is already moving to avenge your death. But if you reveal yourself now, you will ruin the perfect justification we need to claim the resources that will save our homeworld." Zixara's hands trembled with anger. "He admits it. He admits to using my death as an excuse for war. The weak path of diplomacy would have given us nothing," Thexol's message went on. "Only through conquest can we secure what our people need to survive. You have always been too soft, too willing to trust outsiders. That ends now." The message cut off, but immediately another voice took over, a human voice that Marcus recognized. "Sergeant Chen," came General Morrison's cold tone. "We know you're harboring the alien princess. Your sentimental attachment to enemy personnel marks you as a traitor to your own species. Marcus's jaw tightened as they reached the top of the shaft. The princess's death gives us the excuse we need to eliminate the alien threat permanently, Morrison continued. But your interference threatens to expose the necessary actions we've taken. Surrender now and face court-martial. Continue to resist and be destroyed as an enemy of humanity. Both messages ended, leaving Marcus and Zixara in tense silence as they emerged into the industrial sector. They are working together, Zixara said quietly. Thexol and this General Morrison, they both want war, and they are both willing to sacrifice anyone who stands in their way. Including their own people, Marcus added grimly. This isn't about protecting anyone. This is about power. They made their way across the industrial sector using cargo containers and machinery for cover. The area was normally busy with automated systems and maintenance workers, but now it felt eerily empty. Too quiet, Marcus muttered, scanning the area ahead. They've cleared this sector for something. His answer came in the form of energy weapon fire that sparked off the metal container next to his head. Velthari Imperial Guards emerged from concealed positions, their advanced weapons charging for another volley. Run! Marcus shouted, grabbing Zixara's hand and pulling her toward a maze of industrial equipment. They ran through corridors lined with massive pipes and processing units, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. Energy blasts lit up the dimly lit space, leaving scorch marks on walls and equipment. This way, Zixara called, recognizing a service door that led to the station's power distribution center. They burst through the door but found themselves facing human soldiers in black combat gear, General Morrison's special forces. The soldiers raised their weapons and Marcus realized they were trapped between two enemy forces. Down! Marcus yelled, tackling Zixara behind a power coupling just as weapons fire erupted from both directions. The Velthari Imperial Guards and human Black Ops soldiers had found each other, and neither group was backing down. Energy weapons and projectile rifles filled the air with deadly crossfire, while Marcus and Zixara huddled behind inadequate cover. We cannot stay here, Zixara said over the sound of battle. The power couplings are not designed to withstand this kind of damage. As if to prove her point, sparks began flying from the damaged equipment around them. Warning lights flashed throughout the power center, and automated systems began emergency shutdown procedures. The maintenance tunnel behind that control panel, Marcus said, pointing across the battle zone. If we can reach it. That is 20 meters of open ground through active combat, Zixara replied. Yeah, but it's our only option unless you want to wait here until someone wins this firefight. Marcus studied the pattern of weapons fire, looking for a gap in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Zixara accessed her royal emergency codes on her communicator. What are you doing? Marcus asked. Creating a distraction, she replied. I can trigger emergency lockdown protocols throughout this sector. It will seal blast doors and activate fire suppression systems. That might trap us too, or it might give us the confusion we need to escape. Marcus looked at her with newfound respect. Do it. Zixara activated the emergency protocols and immediately the power center filled with suppression foam, while blast doors began sealing throughout the sector. The sudden chaos broke up the firefight as soldiers from both sides found themselves dealing with reduced visibility and blocked escape routes. Now, Marcus said, and they ran for the maintenance tunnel. They almost made it undetected, but one of the Velthari guards spotted them and fired. The energy blast caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the tunnel entrance. Marcus. Zixara caught him as he stumbled, blood seeping through his uniform. Keep moving, he said through gritted teeth. I can walk. But as they entered the tunnel, Zixara could see that his injury was serious. The energy weapon had burned through muscle and damaged his shoulder joint. He needed medical attention soon, or the wound could become life-threatening. There is a medical station 3 levels down, she said, supporting his weight as they moved through the tunnel. No good, Marcus replied weakly. Medical stations will be monitored. They'll find us, Zixara made a decision. Then we use what we have. My people's medical knowledge and your basic first aid supplies. In a small maintenance alcove, she helped Marcus remove his jacket and shirt, revealing the extent of the injury. Using supplies from his backpack and techniques from her royal medical training, she began treating the wound. This is going to hurt, she warned. Already does, Marcus replied with a weak smile. As she worked cleaning and bandaging the injury, Zixara realized something important. The combination of her advanced medical knowledge and his practical first aid supplies was more effective than either would have been alone. Different approaches, working together, created something stronger, just like their alliance. "There," she said, finishing the bandage. "It is not perfect, but it will hold until we can reach proper medical facilities." "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "For everything." "Do not thank me yet," Zixara replied, helping him back into his jacket. "We still have to prove the conspiracy and stop a war." "Right," Marcus said, testing his injured arm. "And now they know we're alive and working together. That makes us enemies to both sides." As they prepared to move deeper into the station's hidden passages, both of them understood that the real hunt had just begun. They were no longer just trying to uncover the truth. They were fighting for their lives against enemies who would stop at nothing to start a war. But they were fighting together, and somehow that made all the difference. Marcus winced as he adjusted his injured arm, but his eyes remained focused on the schematic Zixara had pulled up on her communicator. They were hidden in a maintenance room deep in the station's core, surrounded by humming machinery that masked their voices from listening devices. "The communication center is here," Zixara pointed to the display, but according to these security updates, they have tripled the guard presence. "They know we're coming," Marcus said. "Thexol and Morrison aren't taking any chances." Through her royal access codes, Zixara had been monitoring station communications for the past hour. The news was getting worse by the minute. Both human and Velthari fleets were moving into attack positions. Her father, the Emperor, had declared a holy war to avenge his daughter's death. The Human Federation had responded by mobilizing their entire border defense force. "Estimated time until first contact between the fleets?" Marcus asked. 18 hours, Zixara replied quietly. "Maybe less if someone makes an aggressive move." Marcus studied the station layout, his military training helping him spot patterns in the security deployment. "Look at this. They're guarding the main communication center heavily, but they've left the backup systems in the engineering section with standard protection. The backup systems have limited range," Zixara pointed out. "They cannot reach both fleets simultaneously. But they can reach the station's main communication array," Marcus said, pointing to another section of the schematic. "If we can access the backup systems and route through the main array, we can broadcast to both fleets at once." Zixara traced the route with her finger. "That path takes us through 3 different security zones. And the main array is in the station's command center, the most heavily protected area." "I know," Marcus said grimly, "but it's our only shot at reaching both sides before shooting starts." They gathered their supplies and prepared to move. But as they reached the maintenance room's exit, Marcus's scanner picked up movement in the corridor outside. 4 contacts moving in formation," he whispered. "Military pattern." Through a small observation window, they could see General Morrison himself, leading a squad of human special forces soldiers. The general was speaking into his communicator as they moved past. "The alien and the traitor are somewhere in this sector," Morrison's voice carried clearly. "When you find them, eliminate them both. Make it look like they killed each other in a struggle." After the squad passed, Zixara turned to Marcus with concern. "He called you a traitor." "Yeah, well, he's called me worse things," Marcus replied, but she could see the words had hurt him. "Come on, we need to move while they're searching the wrong area." They made their way through a series of ventilation shafts toward the engineering section. Marcus's injured shoulder made the crawling difficult, but he refused to slow down. Zixara could see sweat beading on his forehead from the pain and effort. "We could rest for a few minutes," she suggested during a brief pause. "No time," Marcus replied. "Every minute we waste is a minute closer to war." When they reached the engineering section, they found it surprisingly quiet. Too quiet. Marcus's military instincts immediately went on alert. "This feels like a trap," he whispered. "Perhaps," Zixara said, "but we do not have alternatives." They made their way to the backup communication systems, a bank of emergency transmitters designed to function if the main communication center was damaged. Zixara began connecting her royal access codes to the system while Marcus kept watch. "I am in," she said after several tense minutes. "But the encryption protocols are more complex than expected. It will take time to establish a clear connection to both fleets." "How much time?" "At least 20 minutes to route through all the security barriers." Marcus checked his scanner again. Still no movement in their immediate area, but he could see search teams working through other parts of the station. "Do it." I'll watch for trouble. As Zixara worked at the communication console, her fingers flying over the control interfaces, Marcus found himself thinking about the past 2 days. 48 hours ago, he had been a simple soldier preparing for possible war. Now he was working with an alien princess to prevent that same war. Marcus, Zixara said without looking up from her work. May I ask you something? Sure. When you first saw me in your quarters, what did you think? Marcus considered the question. Honestly, I thought you looked scared and confused. Nothing like the dangerous alien warriors we were briefed about. And when you decided to help me, I stopped thinking about you as an alien, Marcus said simply. You were just someone who needed help. Zixara paused in her typing and looked at him. That is not how most soldiers think. Maybe that's the problem, Marcus replied. Too much thinking about sides, not enough thinking about people. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of energy weapons charging. Both human and Velthari forces had found them simultaneously, surrounding the engineering section from multiple entrances. Princess Zixara, came Commander Thexol's amplified voice through the station's speaker system. You have caused enough trouble. Surrender now and your death will be quick. Sergeant Chen, General Morrison's voice joined in. You have betrayed your own species for an alien. There is no forgiveness for such treason. Marcus looked at the communication console. The connection process was only halfway complete. How much more time? He asked. 10 minutes minimum, Zixara replied, her hands still working frantically at the controls. Then we hold them off for 10 minutes. Marcus moved to the engineering section's main control panel and began activating emergency protocols. Blast doors sealed at strategic points, creating choke points that would force attackers to approach from predictable directions. What are you doing? Zixara asked. Something I learned in combat engineering, Marcus said, his injured arm making the work difficult. You can't always choose your battlefield, but you can always improve it. Energy weapon fire began hitting the blast doors as both attack forces tried to break through. The doors would hold for a while, but not forever. Marcus, Zixara said urgently. I'm getting through to the communication array, but I need your help with the human military protocols. The Velthari systems I understand, but human encryption is different. Despite his injury and the sound of weapons fire getting closer, Marcus moved to help her. Working together, they began establishing connections to both fleets simultaneously. There, Zixara said. We have communication links to both the Velthari Imperial Fleet and the Human Federation Border Force. Recording active, Marcus confirmed, activating the broadcast systems. The blast doors began showing stress fractures as the concentrated weapons fire took its toll. They had minutes, maybe less, before both attack forces broke through. Princess Zixara speaking, she began, her royal training taking over as she addressed both fleets. I am alive. Reports of my death were deliberately falsified to create justification for war. Sergeant Marcus Chen, Human Federation Marines, Marcus added, leaning close to the communicator despite his pain. The sabotage of the princess's teleportation was a joint operation between extremists on both sides, who want this war to happen. They quickly explained everything they had discovered, the conspiracy between Thexol and Morrison, the staged evidence, the manipulation of both governments. The proof is in the station's communication logs, Zixara continued. Coordinate your investigation efforts and you will find that both our peoples have been deceived. The blast doors finally gave way, and soldiers from both sides poured into the engineering section. But the broadcast had been sent. Both fleets would receive the message, along with the evidence they had managed to upload. Step away from the communication console, Thexol ordered as his Imperial guards surrounded them. The damage is done, Morrison said, his special forces taking position opposite the Velthari soldiers. But we can still clean up this mess. For a moment, the two enemy forces faced each other across the engineering section, with Marcus and Zixara caught in the middle. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a blade. Then something unexpected happened. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Zixara, despite his injuries and despite being outnumbered 20-1. If you want to hurt her, he said quietly, you'll have to go through me first. Zixara moved to stand beside him, facing both groups of soldiers. And if you wish to harm him, you will face the same choice. In that moment, surrounded by enemies and facing impossible odds, the human soldier and the alien princess stood together as allies, as friends, and as proof that their species could choose cooperation over conflict. The question was whether anyone else would make the same choice before it was too late. The standoff in the engineering section lasted only moments, but to Marcus and Zixara it felt like hours. Imperial guards and human special forces faced each other across the room, weapons trained on multiple targets, while the unlikely allies stood together in the center of it all. Then Commander Thexol's communicator crackled to life with an urgent message in the Velthari language. His expression changed from confident to concerned as he listened. Similarly, General Morrison received a transmission that made his face grow dark with anger. "Sir," came a voice through Morrison's device. "Both fleets are standing down. They received the broadcast and are demanding explanations from command." Thexol spoke harshly into his communicator, but the response he received made his shoulders slump in defeat. He looked at Zixara with something between rage and resignation. "Your father has ordered a complete investigation," he said bitterly. "All military actions are suspended pending review of the evidence." "And the Human Federation Council has launched their own inquiry," Morrison added through gritted teeth. "They want to question everyone involved in the operation." Marcus felt Zixara's hand squeeze his uninjured arm in relief. Their desperate plan had worked. The truth was out, and both fleets had pulled back from the edge of war. "It is over," Zixara said softly, but her words carried clearly through the engineering section. "For now," Thexol replied, "but this changes nothing. Our worlds are still dying and diplomacy will not save them." "Maybe not the old kind of diplomacy," Marcus said, surprising everyone by speaking up. "But what if there was a different way?" Before anyone could respond, the engineering section's main doors opened and a mixed group of station security officers, both human and Velthari, entered. But these weren't the corrupt security teams that had been hunting them. These were legitimate station personnel, led by Station Commander Rodriguez and Velthari Ambassador Cathara. "Commander Thexol," General Morrison, Commander Rodriguez said formally, "you are both under arrest for conspiracy, sabotage, and attempting to incite interspecies warfare." The arrest proceeded without resistance. Both Thexol and Morrison seemed to understand that their plans had completely collapsed. As they were led away, Thexol paused near Zixara. "You have doomed your own people, Princess," he said quietly. "Weakness will not save a dying world." "Neither will war," Zixara replied firmly. "But perhaps cooperation might." After the conspirators were removed, medical teams arrived to treat Marcus's injuries properly. As the medics worked on his shoulder, Ambassador Cathara approached Princess Zixara. "Your Highness," the ambassador said, "your father wishes to speak with you immediately. The Emperor is quite relieved to learn of your survival." "In a moment," Zixara replied. "First, I need to discuss something with Sergeant Chen." The medical team finished their work, pronouncing Marcus's shoulder damaged but healing well. As the engineering section emptied of personnel, leaving only Marcus and Zixara with a few security guards, she turned to face him. "Marcus," she said, "you were right about diplomacy needing to be different. I have been thinking about what you said about understanding leading to peace." "Yeah?" Marcus said, flexing his newly treated shoulder carefully. "What if we created a new kind of diplomatic mission? Not just representatives talking in meeting rooms, but actual cooperation. Joint projects where both species work together on shared problems." Marcus's eyes lit up with interest. "Like what?" "Like saving my homeworld," Zixara said. "And helping your people expand into new territories safely. What if instead of fighting over resources, we shared knowledge and worked together to create solutions?" Over the next hour, as they waited for official debriefings to begin, Marcus and Zixara outlined their idea to Station Commander Rodriguez and Ambassador Cathara. Their proposal was ambitious. A joint colonization program where humans and Velthari would work together to terraform worlds suitable for both species. "Humans have incredible adaptability and practical engineering skills," Zixara explained. "Velthari have advanced energy manipulation technology and agricultural knowledge. Together we could transform dead worlds into thriving colonies faster than either species could alone. And it would give both our peoples a positive focus," Marcus added. "Instead of preparing for war, we'd be preparing for growth." The idea sparked immediate interest from both governments. Within days, the proposal had reached the highest levels of both the Human Federation and the Velthari Empire. The concept of joint colonies offered something both sides needed. Humans got access to advanced alien technology, while Velthari got the resources and new worlds necessary to save their civilization. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the observation deck of the colony ship New Harmony, watching the blue-green world of Kepler 442c grow larger on the main display. His shoulder had healed completely, and he now wore the uniform of a Federation Diplomatic Corps officer, a career change that still surprised him sometimes. The atmospheric processors are working ahead of schedule, came a familiar, melodic voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Zixara approaching, now wearing the practical work clothes of a colony administrator rather than royal robes. She carried a data pad showing the progress reports from the surface teams. Your people's engineering approach combined with our energy efficiency techniques, she continued, joining him at the observation window. The toxic atmosphere should be completely converted within 2 years instead of the projected 5. Not bad for a bunch of barbaric humans and dying aliens, Marcus said with a smile. Zixara laughed, a sound that had become common over the past months as they worked together, planning the new colony. I believe we have proven that particular stereotype wrong. The New Harmony was the first of what would become a fleet of joint colony ships. Humans and Velthari families were already living and working together on the surface, building something that neither species could have achieved alone. Marcus, Zixara said quietly, do you ever think about that night when I appeared in your quarters? Every day, Marcus replied. Best wrong turn anyone ever made. It was not a wrong turn, Zixara said thoughtfully. I have been thinking about this for months. The coordinates were sabotaged, yes, but perhaps it was exactly where I needed to be. Marcus looked at her curiously. You think it was meant to happen? I think, Zixara said, watching human and Velthari engineers working together on the planet's surface, that sometimes the best discoveries happen when you step into the wrong room and find exactly what you didn't know you were looking for. In his small quarters aboard the colony ship, Marcus had started a new garden. Earth roses grew alongside Velthari singing crystals, creating something beautiful that had never existed before. Just like their friendship, just like their alliance, just like the future they were building together. The former soldier and the former princess had become something new, partners in the greatest adventure either of their species had ever attempted. They were no longer just preventing war, they were creating peace, one shared world at a time. As the New Harmony entered orbit around humanity and Velthari's first shared world, Marcus and Zixara stood together watching their impossible dream become reality. The human capacity for friendship and the Velthari gift for cooperation had created something stronger than either species alone, and it all started because a princess stepped into the wrong room and found the right future. On the planet below, children of both species would grow up together, learning that differences were not obstacles to overcome, but strengths to celebrate. The galaxy would never be the same. Neither would Marcus and Zixara, and they were perfectly happy about that.